Councilmember Sperry.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Danuski. Here. Deputy Mayor Van Ness. Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Councilmember Herbig.
Here.
And Van Ness, yeah, he's excused. Will be here a little later. All right. We are out of executive session. No action will be taken. And we're now in our regular meeting. If you will all please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, but there's been some modifications made. Presentation A is being moved to the 19th.
Okay. Get my pen out.
Presentation C is being moved to the 19th. Business agenda A is being moved to the 19th.
Actually, Your Honor, not business agenda A.
Pardon?
Business agenda A is staying on for tonight.
I've got move on mine.
He's looking at the second business agenda. I
One's
think.
15, one's...
Yes, the second business agenda item, A. I guess there's two business A's tonight.
There are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Business A number 2.
But there's business A under 13, and there's business A under 15.
It would be the one under 15.
Yes, indeed. Move to the 19th.
Correct.
All right.
It is.
So, with those changes, let me just run over what is actually going on tonight. There's an introduction, and then there is going to be an update on the ball fields, and then we go to a public hearing, and then to discussion of parental leave, and then C. So, if there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as modified.
So moved.
Well, hearing no objections, it stands approved. All right, next item on the agenda is a presentation to introduce Maureen Colaizzi.
Oh.
Probably butchering that name, and sorry. Parks Project Manager, and Lauri Anderson, Senior Planner, will do the introduction.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Baker and council members. I'm very pleased to introduce Maureen Colaizzi, who is our new Parks Project Manager. She comes to us from the city of Shoreline, where she has worked for about the past 10 years. She's done capital project management, grant writing, and also long-range parks planning, a PROS plan, a couple of them, I think, for Shoreline. Anyway, she has experience with waterfront parks, which is particularly relevant since she's jumping right in and working on 2 of the walkways and waterways projects, Squires Landing and Log Boom Park. Her educational background is in landscape architecture, and I think in the past she's even worked as a landscape designer. So welcome to Maureen.
Thank you very much, Lauri.
Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, glad
I'm
to
very
have you
excited. This is going to be great.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to every moment.
You will find that you won't miss Shoreline.
What did you say?
You won't miss Shoreline.
And they told me that. They said, you have to love Kenmore as much as you love Shoreline. And I said, I will.
Oh, you'll love Kenmore much more.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with y'all.
We look forward to working with you, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Next item on the agenda. This one's been a little time coming, and I'm certainly excited about it. Mary's Place, update on community meetings and proposed Kenmore location. Marty Hartman, Executive Director. Dan McGrady, Member of Board of Directors for Mary's Place. And looks like the Assistant City Manager, Nancy Owsley, and Brian Hampson, our Developmental Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to get an update from Mary's Place on the recent round of meetings that they've had in the community, including one just last Thursday night. I wasn't able to be there, but as you know, Mary's Place is a shelter for families, and King County has worked with this agency on a lease for the now vacant police precinct building down the street. And Mary's Place has applied for permits to occupy the building. So the groups that they have met with here in the community, I think the first one was the Kenmore Business Alliance, and then nearby neighbors to the precinct. And so they're here to give you an update and answer any questions that you may have as they go forward. But joining Brian and me tonight are Executive Director Marty Hartman, Dan McGrady, who is a member of the Board of Directors for Mary's Place. And when I worked for the City of Seattle, we worked on a lot of interesting projects together because he was working for council staff at that time. And also Mark Ellerbrook, who is the Manager of Regional Housing and Community Development for King County. So with that, I will turn it over to Marty.
Thank you, Council. Turn that on. Thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. We'd actually like to start with a video just to show you a little bit about what we do and how we operate. So here we go.
Audio.
On any given night, there are 500 families in the Seattle area sleeping outside. Many of them can be found in their cars, some in tents. We pulled mothers out of porta potties with their children. We've seen families in all types of conditions, children using a bucket outside their car to go to the bathroom. You see them running into the local grocery store to take a bath and brush their teeth before heading off to school. These families are just seeking a safe place to come inside to restore their dignity.
Our lease expired, and the landlord didn't want to let us renew the lease, and so we tried to find, another place. We had money for rent. We just didn't have the first month's, last month's, and deposits and all that. Well, she was staying in a shelter for women and children. I was sleeping in the car. I slept in the car for 5 or 6 months through the winter. But, she really needed me at night, to give baths and help feed. Mary's Place has brought me and her together, and our kids. We're all together as a family, in the same place, eating together, sleeping together, doing everything together like a family should do. We got somewhere, I guess, we can call home for now until we do catch a break. And the only thing we can do is just keep trying. Never give up. Because I'm never going to give up. I'm going to keep trying and trying and trying. What do you want for Christmas?
I want a tiger.
You want a tiger?
I want Elsa stuff. And Anna stuff. A lot of Lego guys.
I want a house.
Mary's Place operates 2-day centers and overnight shelters for families experiencing homelessness in the Seattle area. Our location in North Seattle is in a former bank building, but it's home to 400 family members during the day, and 100 family members get to sleep here at night. Our building transforms every day. At nighttime, you'll see the curtains pulled, families on mats, babies in pack-and-plays. You'll see parents reading goodnight stories. And in the morning, we transform this exact same space to tables and chairs where families eat around a dining table together and sit together as a family.
This is Kenzie Ann. She's just a little over 2 weeks, I think it's like 17 days. It was cold and miserable. And the kids kept saying they were tired and they just wanted to go somewhere. It's such a stress off my shoulders. I mean, knowing that I've got somewhere that my kids can stay. Yeah, there we go. Good job, buddy.
We get the phone calls every day. We get the dad that slept at the airport with his 2 young children last night and wanting to come inside tonight. We hear the hospitals calling saying, can you take this mom and her newborn inside tonight? We get those phone calls every day, and we can't say yes. There just simply aren't enough beds.
We've been here for a year. It's me and my daughter and my significant other, her father. He's at work right now. He's just had a job for the last month.
Regardless of the choices parents make, children are out there at no fault of their own. They deserve to be inside together with their families. They deserve a safe place to call home, a place to do their homework, a place to brush their teeth, a place to put on new socks, a place to get a dry diaper and not have to sit in the 20-pound diaper that's been duct taped to you because you don't have another one. In any crisis across this country, an earthquake and a hurricane and a flood, we would all open our doors. Our community centers would be open. Our faith community would be open. Every city building would be open. We'd be saying, come in, please, come in, be safe, be together, be dry. What do you need? This is our crisis. This is the crisis in this city right now, is homelessness. This is solvable. If there's one part of homelessness that we can do something about today, it's bringing every family inside.
Good evening. I'm Dan McGrady, and I'm a board member of Mary's Place, and I have the unenviable job of being in between that video and our executive director, Marty Hartman. I'd like to thank the city of Kenmore, Nancy Owsley and her staff, and Mayor Baker and Councilmember Herbig for being champions and suggesting that we come take a look at a building here, and eventually got to a place where we are today, which has been a very rewarding journey that we are very grateful to be on. I'd also like to thank King County, Adrian Quinn, who's not here tonight, Mark Ellerbrook, King County Executive Dow Constantine, King County Council, particularly Rod Dembowski. Councilmember Dembowski has been very helpful in moving this forward. Mary's Place is addressing our community crisis of family homelessness by making sure that no child sleeps outside. We work with developers, governments, local jurisdictions throughout Seattle and King County to shelter families. Right now, we are able to shelter 450 family members a night, and we want to get to 750 bed nights by the end of the year. As you can see, the video highlights how some Seattle efforts, but homelessness and family homelessness is not a Seattle-only problem. And maybe later we could talk a little bit about where families are coming from and what we are seeing. The proposed Kenmore facility will allow us to take in 80 family members a night. That's 80 people not unsheltered. Our mission is to empower homeless women, children, and families to reclaim their lives. And our goal is to move families experiencing homelessness back into permanent housing, stable housing within 90 days. Our goal is to get people back on their feet, get them goals, get them ready to go and find housing. We are a housing-first organization. Each family that comes into Mary's Place is assigned an advocate within 48 hours who makes sure that children get back into school if they're not in school, remove barriers to housing and employment, and set goals and strategies to get back into stable housing. We take families of every kind and every flavor. At our 7 locations in King County, we provide shelters for families, for single moms, for single dads, extended families, families with pets, families with children who have life-threatening illnesses, moms with newborns. And we are even moving, I would argue, further upstream to catch families before they become unsheltered so that we don't have to serve them in a shelter setting. The need in our communities is growing, and Mary's Place is growing to attempt to keep up with that need. Thank you for making that possible here in Kenmore.
I want to just give you some nuts and bolts about what the shelter will look like. We got some advice at our meeting last week that we should call it Mary's Place North Shore, so that it would be clear that we are pulling from the North Shore School District. You have well over 200 children identified in your school district that have nowhere to sleep tonight. Those are the children that we're trying to address. Those are the children that we want to bring inside to this building. Our hours would be 24/7, knowing that there's no good time for a child or a family to be outside. We want to provide those wraparound services inside, on site, which means that we're working towards financial stability, housing stability. We'll have employment services, housing services, medical care. We'll have our own on-site kids club, and we'll bring in providers from across the county to provide services to these families right here, right now. Whether it's the library, whether it's the YMCA providing health care access, whether it's Solid Ground helping with tenants' rights and financial stability, they're all coming. They're all coming to serve these families because they need them most right now. We have multiple staff on site at any given time. The least you'll see is 3 staff overnight, which is a security guard and on-site supervisor and lead staff. But there can be as many as up to 7 or 8 during the day, depending on how many advocates and employment advisors are on site. In order to get this far, we've done, Nancy mentioned, and thank you, Nancy, for making so many connections in the community for us. We have been out to the senior centers. We've met with the fire chief. We've met with the preschool, which was next door, Ravinder. And we've also been out to some of the outlying apartment buildings. We had our community meeting, as Nancy told you, last week on Thursday night. It was well attended by over 60 people. We heard an overwhelming response for people that wanted to see this in their community, wanted a place to serve, wanted to know that their neighbors were inside and safe and warm and alive and together as a family. We had lots of questions about the number of families, the screening criteria, and the hours, and I can share with you what I shared with them, is that we do screen out. We do background checks on our families because safety is paramount to all of us. I said that most of us don't get to choose our next door neighbors, but we know who is sleeping in the mat or the bed next to us. We screen out for sexual offenders, we screen out for Class A felonies, and we are very mindful at looking at domestic violence issues and assaults to make sure that that domestic violence does not follow the victim to the shelter. We did have some concerns about loitering. So we talked about what that looks like inside, that our families are extremely busy. They're extremely tired. They get up very early, just like most of you, but they're working the bus to try to get their children to childcare, to school, them to work, and they do the reverse on the backside. We do have curfew, which is 8:30 p.m. every night, unless a family has a work schedule and is working, and lights out is at 9, and often it's much before 9 p.m. because people are so exhausted. We do a little story time before we go to bed, and then it's lights out. There's ample opportunity for volunteers, which we're looking forward to. We need people to throw birthday parties. We need you to hold a baby or rock a baby while a mom can take a shower. We need meals. We need kids' snacks. We need backpacks for school, but mostly we need relationship. We need people to come beside us to remind us and to remind these families that they're not forgotten, that they're worthy, that they're good, that they're capable, that you care about them, and that you would miss them if they weren't there. Because every single one of these families will move into a forever home. It's only a matter of time. 97% of homeless families are homeless one time in their whole life. This is that chapter you walked in on. Life was better before this, and life will be much better after this. So we feel that it's our obligation to help our neighbors, to bring them inside, to give them the skills and empower them to do the work. So we are looking forward to being part of your neighborhood. We do have things we need to be doing in the building, which we're getting right on. We need to submit plans back with corrections, and so we are working that process, and we hope to move in sometime in July. But I'll leave that to Mark, who's our Superman and really a hero from King County that has helped us navigate this whole process. So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Marty. And again, Mark Ellerbrook with King County. I manage the Housing and Community Development Program for the county. As Marty mentioned, we are very far along as far as getting the property available for Mary's Place. In fact, the lease is largely complete, and we just need to go through and do the final approvals of that, and then working with both the City of Kenmore and Mary's Place as far as the final improvements that need to be made to the building to allow folks to move in. So I know that we've been working with the City of Kenmore, with Nancy, with Brian, and others to get that done. And so we anticipate that being taken care of in the very near future. And we certainly appreciate the City of Kenmore and all the willingness to do the reviews quickly, to move this process along. It's been a great process for us. So I think we're very far along in doing that. And as Marty mentioned, we had a great meeting here last week with the community. So those are kind of moving along in tandem. I just comment on a couple things that the county is trying to do, and this Kenmore facility is a perfect example. One thing that Marty highlighted very well in the video is this is a region-wide crisis that we are facing. And when the county looks at how do we step up, we obviously do a lot of funding to support shelters, but we also have facilities that are underutilized, and the Kenmore Sheriff's site is one of those. We have another one that we've opened up a public health clinic in White Center. These are facilities that can be used in an interim to help house families or single adults or whatever the case may be. And that's, I think, one area that we are stepping into and trying to make better use of our facilities. And this was something that Councilmember Dembowski on the King County Council was very instrumental in focusing on the Kenmore facility. The other piece that we are trying to do across the county is look at the way we provide shelter services. Historically, the county has operated an emergency shelter system. So you come in at 8 o'clock at night, you find a place to sleep on the floor, you have to be out by 6 o'clock in the morning. That is not a great way to survive day to day, particularly in November, December, when it is cold and rainy and you are turned out onto the streets at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's also not a great way to deal with all of your various barriers to housing, whether it be any of those employment or mental health, any of those sorts of issues. We know that we need to be doing better in operating a 24/7 shelter that really can help families, in this case, address all of the housing barriers that they face. And I think by doing a 24/7 shelter here downtown in Seattle, in White Center, and in Bellevue and other places, we are really trying to change that system to help get people indoors, off the streets at all hours, and really addressing sort of all of the barriers that they face for housing, and I think really leading to success, as Marty pointed out. The vast majority of folks who Mary's Place works with are able to move out of the shelter within 90 days and into permanent housing, and that's absolutely the goal here. I think the final thing that I would say, and this is a great example, and I really appreciate Kenmore stepping up as well, the solution to ending the homeless crisis that we face is a community effort. So we can step in with partners like Mary's Place and with the city of Kenmore and local and regional government. But I think the thing that Mary's Place does so well is really mobilize the community to step up. How do you bring volunteer services? How does a family come in and volunteer? How do you get to know the people who are part of the city of Kenmore, who are part of the North Shore area in King County, who are, as Marty pointed out, have hit that one bump in their road, but are still members of this community. And I think when we humanize homelessness, I think that's when we begin to turn the corner and really make a dent in the crisis that is before us. So that's what I'll say, and if folks have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So can I read a bedtime story?
Absolutely. You can read the first bedtime story.
Councilmember Smith.
Hi, thanks for coming this evening. And I do have a question regarding, Dan, you mentioned that it's usually 90 days. I think you said you try to place them. What happens if you can't, if there isn't a viable solution at 90 days? What is the process?
I'll let Marty address more of an operational question.
So we do have an extension for everybody, and not everybody will get out in 90 days, but you have a guaranteed home with Mary's Place as long as you're working towards your housing goals with us. You will stay there until you get your forever home.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Danuski.
Thank you for doing what you do. It's probably one of the most important things people can do, so thank you. One question, you mentioned that you're going to be taking from North Shore School District, which is wonderful. Since you guys are a King County organization and a lot of North Shores in Snohomish County, are they allowed to come as well?
Yeah, we'll work with the North Shore School District really to identify those sleeping outside tonight in the cars, and then we'll bring them in. Nope. The whole idea is if you're unsheltered tonight and to take in our neighbors here, most of the time families are forced to leave their community when they've lost their address. And so we're trying to turn that upside down and say, you know what, you've lost your address, but you haven't lost your community. They're here to love you and support you. So.
Thank you.
Can you also explain the schools? Because I think there was some concern that we would be overwhelming, like Kenmore Elementary or something. Could you just explain, like you did at the meeting, that they go to their home school?
Oh, sure. Yes. So because of the McKinney-Vento law, children are connected to their home school. So as they sign into school for the year, they are eligible to continue to attend that school for the entire year, and they're eligible for transportation simply by giving an address of wherever they may be sleeping. So if they're sleeping in Fred Meyer's or Walmart parking lot, it doesn't matter. The school district provides that transportation. Mary's Place just works with those McKinney-Vento liaisons from those schools to make sure that they're ensured that they go back to their home school. Our way of, and the county and the state's way of making sure that children have that consistency and continuity, the same group of friends, that same teacher.
So they may lose their home, their bed, but they're not going to lose their friends.
That's right. It's a beautiful way to say it.
Councilmember Curtis.
So it sounds like King County is one of your main funding sources. What are some of the other sources?
We're predominantly funded by individuals, corporations, foundations, congregations, and then government funding.
Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you guys for everything you do, and I'm really glad that we were able to make this connection and partner with you, because the work you do is so incredibly important, and it's important, I think, for a lot of us just to be reminded what people less fortunate than us are facing every day and what we could face if something goes deeply wrong in our lives. And it's good that there's people like you to help these folks out and get them back on their feet. So thank you.
Well, thank you for throwing us a lifeline. Sometimes it's all you need to be pulled into safety, and you've done that. And so we can't thank you enough for saving our lives and bringing our families inside. We have the easy part. We get to invite them in and love on them. So, and now you do too. So thank you.
So for those of you, the audience, there has to be a child involved. It can be a single mom, it can be a single dad, it could be a family. husband and wife, but there has to be a child involved, and no child should have to sleep in a car or a tent. So, would it be possible for you, and I know you can't speak for the county, but we would love to have regular reports, maybe quarterly, maybe semi-annually, just some sort of report so we understand what's going on and we can answer questions also in the community. And, I'll leave it to you to work it out with Nancy and Rob, but it would be great if we could get you guys commit to a regular report so we knew what was going on.
Sure. We do that regularly, and we do that in the White Center neighborhood. So we're happy to do that. Anything we can do to keep you updated.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Councilmember Sperry.
Well, thank you. It's good to see you all again. It was a pleasure to hear your presentation at the community meeting, and I thought the concerns were quite legitimate. I thought they were addressed very well, and I know that will continue to be part of the process. But the sentiment I got was that people are very welcoming and want to be a part of this. So my question really is, someone watches this or hears about Mary's Place, how would you direct them if they want to give either time or financially or somehow partner with you? What would you suggest as far as connection?
Thank you for asking. If you have a passion to serve or come beside families experiencing homelessness, we want that too. We say that everybody has a skill or a talent, and things that you do with your family and friends are things our families want to do as well. So you can go to the Mary's Place website. It's www.marysplaceseattle.org, and you can click on volunteering, get information there, sign up for an orientation, and then once you do the orientation, and we'll be hosting them right out of here, out of the site once we do move in. You can sign up to bring meals, you can sign up to tutor children, you can sign up to rock a baby, fill out housing applications, help with resumes, mock job interviews, whatever it is that you have a passion for. You can bring your Girl Scout troop, your Boy Scout troop, church groups. We love everybody coming, and make sure you bring the kids too, because that's probably the greatest gift to our kids, is to be in relationship with kids in their neighborhood.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you so much.
Just one last thing, if there are no more questions from council. When we first took a tour of that North Seattle facility a few months ago, we happened to be there on the one afternoon a week that Bastyr has naturopathic physician students in the house. And talking with leadership at Bastyr, they are super connected with Mary's Place and super excited about them coming to Kenmore. After being in several of these meetings with neighbors, there were the kind of the same questions that came up in discussion, but always one of the questions was, how can I help? How can I donate? And so I was really struck by that sentiment in the community as well. So one meeting that got just scheduled today is going to happen later this month, and it's with the Uplake Neighborhood Association. So I think that these people have been very, very willing to schedule things on short notice and be available to answer questions in the community. So thanks for being here tonight.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for you to express your views on issues that are important to you and to the community. We ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. This is not a chance for two-way dialogue. This is a chance for you to tell us what's concerning you and issues of importance to you and to the community. Anyway, will the clerk please call the first person?
Just want to let the council know we have 25 people signed up tonight. So, Vicki Grayland.
Because of time constraints and that we got a business agenda, we'll see how this goes, and we may stop at 30 minutes or so and pick it up at the end if necessary. But let's see how this goes. No, we're talking about public comment and ball fields. Ball fields are part of the public comments.
Yeah.
They are? Yes.
Go ahead, Vicki.
I'm Vicki Grayland. I live in Kenmore, and I'm very happy to live in a city that's stepping up and helping to solve homelessness. Good job, everybody. I'm here to talk about baseball. As a disclaimer, I have to let you know that I love baseball. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan, and I've wasted a lot of time in the right field bleachers of beautiful Wrigley Field. And I've stood on that grass, and it's not artificial. And Ernie Banks had a long, wonderful career and a healthy retirement. But getting back to this, St. Edward's Park, I don't think this is the right place for expansion of baseball. I've looked for the proof that the changes to St. Edward's Park are necessary, but I can't find that proof. From my perspective, the person asking for these changes has not proved his case. I'm looking at paragraph 2 of the document, the status update document, and I'm going into my copy editor mode here. It says, the youth and soccer leagues serving Kenmore are part of a larger service area and have experienced significant growth over the last few years in competition for use of fields. Now, for me, this statement is very vague. When you're proposing to spend $5 million of the people's money, you should have some hard data. The company that I work for, if we were spending $5 million, it would have very intricate, hard data for that expenditure. So where is the data? What are the specifics? The figures explaining the need are not in the city's website, and they're not on the Little League's website. So if there are numbers, what's the source of the numbers? Do we have dependable source for numbers that may or may not exist? Is this just a feeling that one person is having a harder time getting the fields scheduled? Then that's my first point. My second point is this: I looked at the city's website on this. It says, President of the North Lake Little League, 456 kids signed up for the 2016 season, growing registration over the last 4 years, but fewer fields to play on. Support turf fields and lighting providing fields in Kenmore. Those 456 kids come from 3 towns, Kenmore, Bothell, and Briar. So my question is, what are the numbers for the last 4 years? They say they're increasing, but what did they used to be 4 years ago? How much of an increase is 456? And how many fewer fields? Were there more fields available 4 years ago and they went away? I don't know. What is the league membership by town? Currently, Kenmore provides 5 locations with 6 fields. Bothell provides 9 locations. Briar provides 1, I think. Aren't we doing our fair share?
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
I'm up? Okay.
You're at 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Macy Ratliff.
Hello, Kenmore City Council, Kenmore neighbors and friends. First, I'm absolutely thrilled that you're going to...
Please state your name and city of residence.
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Macy Lawrence Ratliff, and I live at 14925 73rd Avenue Northeast here in Kenmore. And first of all, I'd like to say I'm absolutely thrilled that you guys are bringing in Mary's Place. I had an amazing opportunity to volunteer there a couple of years ago, and they just do incredible work. And having worked in the North Shore School District, there are many students that I worked with who are homeless, and this is just wonderful. Like many in this room, we chose to move to Washington State. We came for the beauty, the quality of life, along with jobs, education, and family. For the last 28 years, we've lived in the Kenmore area, raising kids, attending the local school system, and partaking in the many activities in and around the surrounding area. We've truly been blessed with a jewel of a park in our area. Throughout most of its history, this park has been accessible to all. More recently, with the addition of the state daily or usage fee, some families have not been able to attend the park that were able to before. And my question, which I'm just curious about, is that addressed for potential Little League families coming? Do they have to pay a daily fee or or do they have to purchase a Discover Park pass? And I'm just curious how that's been addressed. Some of you in this room may know me, others may not. For this purpose, I would like to share a little bit about the work that I do in this community and the greater world. My work with families and children focuses on child development, self-esteem, mental health, and community building. As we continue this discussion about ball fields, my hopes and dreams are to have a discussion, a platform of caring, respect, listening to all different sides in a compassionate way. One of the wonderful things about St. Edward's State Park is awe, the sense of awe, A-W-E, a sense of wonder, connecting us to the world around. As we enter the park, we drive down a beautiful wooded, tree-lined road, and a sense of awe is evoked. Soon, our heart beats a little slower. For many, a sense of calm enters in. We feel the beauty of the trees above, the wind. Many landscape designers, including Olmsted, intentionally create a transition point as one enters a beautiful park, and an intentional transition from the busy world, the busy road outside. The area that we know as the current ball fields is such an area. It's natural. Yes, it's a bit swampy, and yet it's used and enjoyed by many. It's a lovely transition from wanting to drive to the pristine beauty as one goes farther into the park.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cliff, Jolyn? Oh. All right, you're up.
Should have them lined
Sorry
up.
about that.
Not a bad idea, is it?
Good evening. My name's John Ratliff. Live at the same address as Macy in Kenmore, and we've lived there for quite a while. And I'm really thankful for this time to speak to everybody. I love St. Edward's Park. I feel so fortunate to be close to that wonderful place. And one of the reasons I love that park, yes, I like the hiking trails, but when I drove into that park and I came to the top of the park and I noticed the solitude, the openness, the peacefulness, the quiet, I said, what a value this is. Yes, I love the hiking trails, but I can go hiking, drive miles out, but right where I live in this neighborhood, I can go someplace that is open, quiet, and peaceful. That has value. Has more value, I believe, than another sports field. I was an assistant soccer coach for my daughter's soccer team, so I love soccer, not against sports. I understand we're going to be building another sports field in Moorlands, a grass field. We have Big Thin Hill. Bastyr has 2 sports fields. You have one in Forest Green, Arrowhead, Kenmore Junior High, Inglemoor, Bothell, Juanita. We have lots of sports fields, but when we talk about quiet, peaceful, solitude places, I only know of one. Kenmore, the park. So what I'm trying to do is convince you to pull back on the plan to develop that ball field. Now, if I'm unable to convince you to fully pull back, I would ask you to consider dramatically reducing it. Do we really need, and I appreciate this write-up, by the way, that says that you've been analyzing this. I understand that you're analyzing the lights for the animals, for the bats. That's appreciated. Because, again, where else do we have wildlife in the park? I've been to those ball fields that we're going to develop, and I've just last year saw 3 deer walking across them. Once you develop that area, I don't believe those 3 deer are going to be walking through there. So I'm asking you to consider, if you know lights, maybe 1 field is enough, but my best request is leave it the way it is. If you need to develop it, maybe make it a nice grass place, because the top of the field is where everybody can go. My friend who is disabled, who cannot walk on the trails, that's where he goes, is in the upper part of the park. My grandfather, my wife's father, when he would visit us and he was in a wheelchair, we would take him to that upper part of the park because he can't go on the trails. That upper part of the park is for everybody.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff.
Karen McFadden.
My name is Karen McFadden. I've been in Kenmore almost 60 years. Long time, lots of changes. And I'm here to second the previous speaker. He said some of my points that just you heard it twice. I'm going to speak a little bit with an overview because I think others may come with more details. I have 7 points about St. Edward and the baseball proposal. I am concerned with the big LED lights on until 9 o'clock. As I was coming down the hill to this meeting, I saw the big lights at Bothell, skip the valley all the way to Kenmore. I think that if we want to have bats and migratory birds, we have to protect them. They can't live otherwise. I've heard there may be cyclone fencing, which to me really diminishes the quality of the park to have cyclone fencing along the edges, and also the loss of informal public use. I hike the trails regularly, and I often see families playing in that field, just throwing a frisbee, whatever. Third, the proposal, if I understand it, was for 2 fields instead of 1. And the only way you can really get that is by encroaching into the wetland buffer or even draining some of the wetlands, which I think would be just horrible. I want to tell you something that you may not know. When it was a seminary, they played baseball on the other side, on the Great Lawn. They never used that area as a baseball field, but they did play soccer on it. I thought that was interesting. Fourth, there's been talk of an artificial turf, and I am concerned with all the living matter that lives in grass and under grass that is part of our ecosystem, and removing that grass and putting any sort of artificial turf, which we don't know the long-range ramifications of a lot of the latest artificial turf, whether it's healthy for people. I think that that would not be wise. And also, there are some people, for example, the international cricket team that was playing when I was there last time, that plays on grass and would not be able to play on
Mayor, we're at 3
artificial
minutes.
turf.
Mayor, 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Freed.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Freed. I am the president of North Lake Little League. That was referred to earlier. First off, before I get started, I'd really love all the kids to stand up.
You're next.
Please. You know, we got a lot of North Lake kids here. And first off, I think it's fantastic that they were actually here for the Mary's Place. I think that's a phenomenal thing that you guys are doing. And so for the kids to be here, to see the process, you know, we're adults. We debate, we argue, we discuss. Eventually, we decide to come to some course of action. I really appreciate that the kids are spending school night. They're coming out here, maybe skipping dinner or postponing dinner. So they're here, so I really appreciate you guys doing that. One of the complaints when I went down to Olympia last year was that there were too many Little League kids here, that it was unfair, or that there's the Little League lobby. And I thank the people for making that point, because that proves that this is what our community wants. This is about our kids. At the end of the day, we're adults, we're doing our thing, we're going off to work. These are kids who want a safe place to play. If I could go beyond 3 minutes, I have all the numbers that were asked for that have actually already been provided to the city. We started with 398 kids in 2013, then 427, 434, 474. This year we hit 526 kids. We went from 32 teams to 49 teams, which means we have practices where 3 or 4 teams are sharing a field. People talk about Big Fin Hill. It is unavailable to us. That is part of Kirkland. People talk about Briar Park. That is not safe. We have not played there for years. The fields at St. Edward's Park, we used to play on 10 years ago. They are not safe for kids. You've got turned ankles. You've got all sorts of injuries. We cannot do that. It's for the safety of our kids. In terms of numbers, 257 of our players are from Kenmore, 222 are from Bothell, and the rest, and there are 17 from Briar. The rest are not listed. We have no fields available to us in Bothell because we're South Bothell and we're South Briar. So our community is Kenmore. We are the only league that serves Kenmore. And the only fields we have in Kenmore are the elementary schools, Bastyr University. 10 years ago, we had 4 fields at Bastyr. Now we have 2. Forsgrim, we have 2. We lost Logan Park. So I've got all that information. I've shared all that information. But what I ask is that I love St. Edward's Park. I bike there. I walk my dogs there. I go hiking there. We're not cutting down any trees. We're not asking anybody to change the footprint. These ball fields are already there, and they're unsafe. And so we have kids who have turned ankles. There are 2 complaints I get about Little League baseball and Little League softball. Number 1 is the umpires. I'm sorry. Nobody here can fix that. Usually it's me that are complaining about my calls. But number 2 is the fields. Bastyr fields are a swamp when it rains, and they're concrete when it's dry. And even if it's been dry for 5 days, if it rains for 1 day, we're rained out for the next 2. The kids need a safe place to play. We get turned ankles every year. Last year, this past season, we played their championship game with a home plate that had been torn up out of the ground. The wood underneath it had rotted. And so we were banging away at the metal rods to get it out of there. We need a safe place. And so, yes.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
To show that this is what's important to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do have numbers. We do have facts.
Patrick O'Brien.
Pat O'Brien, 6330 Northeast 181st Street. I am for baseball fields too, and I believe more is always better. Why have 2 when you can have 8? The city is going to, the total expenditure on these fields is $4,869,106. And if you took that money and put it into Shelton, Seton View, Lockwood, Frank Love, Kenmore Junior High, which you don't even have access to, Arrowhead Elementary.
Mr. O'Brien, would you please address the council?
I'll address the microphone. How about that?
Mr. O'Brien.
Mayor Baker, who am I addressing? I'm addressing the public.
You're here addressing
I'm
the
here
council,
addressing
not the
both,
audience.
actually. So we understand how you feel about these things, Mayor Baker, but why don't you give somebody a chance to talk and not interrupt them, because we can't interrupt you. Thank you. So that $4 million could go a long way to improve existing ball fields. And I would think as a parent, if I could get 8 usable fields, that would go a lot better for use and the safety of the kids. The fact of the matter is that Bastyr has been used as baseball fields for 60 years. And a portion of that money, as long as you didn't have to have AstroTurf, I think that's one of the main stumbling blocks with the rest of the community, is they don't really want to see AstroTurf there. So is it possible to have a graded, usable field with some sort of bluegrass or, a quality field, but not AstroTurf? So the other thing is the city priorities. How can the city look to expend this money, even though you're getting $600,000 in grants and whatnot, without any sort of a movement by the city, the public? And there's already a circulation of a study. Well, 2,500 people said that they didn't want what was going on at St. Edward's Park to happen. And the council has disregarded that and gone along with it, even though there's a terrific outcry of the citizens to look at this. And you don't have the numbers, and you have a need, and everybody says, yeah, those kids need a ball field, but what a better way to spend the money on more ball fields and get them access than to change the use within a state park. And that's what you're doing. That has a use, whether you see it as, with lights and AstroTurf and everything else, it is used. It is grazing land. And I heard someone on the council say, well, it's between baseball and birds and bats. It isn't. It's between what you're allocating city money for and could it be used somewhere else more efficiently
Mayor,
and
we're at 3
more
minutes.
on your chain of things
O'Brien,
that
we're at
need
3
to
minutes.
be accomplished by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Karen Prince.
Good evening, Mayor Baker and the council. I'm Karen Prince, and I live in Kenmore, 15122 65th Avenue Northeast, very near to the beautiful park. I agree that ball fields are important. I want that to be clear to everybody. That the opportunity to play sports is something most parents rightly believe in. My question is, as I'm echoing many who have spoken, why must this highly developed ball field complex be placed in the core of St. Edward State Park? This is a beautiful remnant of a natural and cultural landscape, a place protected by the St. Edward State Park Management Plan. And it's traditionally a place of refuge and quietude. I think with investigation that other fields in Kenmore could be improved and used instead. The, quote, improvements that you have in the plan violate the character of the park. I ask, how can grinding up and removing 131,000 square feet of sod be part of a best management environmental practice? This space is blessedly free from maintenance sheds, chain link fences, organized straight lines, and our kids need places like this, and so do we adults. Science is telling us that. Besides my concern about the destruction of the immediate environment and all the living biota that would be underneath that removed all the sod, the synthetic turf is controversial for health reasons. And I would ask the question of the previous, before Patrick, about the safety issue. How safe is it for children? Anyway, replacing it every 10 years is expensive compared to the expense of maintaining the current grass field. And our planet already suffers from too much plastic. Also, how do we know the true impact of all these changes on the underground hydrology? You have noted the light-sensitive bat species in the park, but what effect will night lights and noise have on other wild creatures? Or the cumulative effect of traffic and noise from the lodge, conference center, and ball fields together? I have seen no comments about that. Here's another idea I'd like to put forward, and other people are too. Consider that the ball field, as it is, can become an exciting partner of the new space within the renovated seminary, a 2,000 square foot classroom space set aside for public use as an environmental education and research center. This center imagines the entire park landscape, forests, streams, wetlands, grassy areas, and shorefront as ways to present a wide variety of opportunities for environmental teaching and learning from grades K through 12 and through adulthood. The potential is there to serve a much larger and more diverse population. Ladies and gentlemen, please, for the greater good, stop pushing this proposal. These ball fields belong in a municipal setting where they would be welcome
Mayor, we're at
and
3
do
minutes.
no harm. I want to just say one more thing. This is my grandson, and I took this, I love this picture because it shows he's looking at a dandelion, and it shows the magic that can happen in nature. By bludgeoning our way into this space, we can succeed in turning something special into something ordinary. We can be modern-day alchemists who have discovered how to turn gold into lead. Thank you very much.
Paul Smith.
Give them to the clerk, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Paul Schmidt, 14817 74th Place Northeast, and also representing FAPK, the Families for Active Parks in Kenmore. Commenting on the St. Edward's Ballpark project for soccer, softball, lacrosse, and baseball fields. Playing on a well-groomed natural surface year-round, it's a fantastic scenario. My son has the privilege of playing on just one of those fields over in Kirkland, over at Lee Johnson Field. Challenge, though, is that we live in the Northwest, where it rains, where it gets dark early in the fall and in the springtime. So even that field, which has taken the utmost care and attention from the Kirkland Parks and Recreation Department, becomes unusable in our climate. Right now, my son's team has 5 rainout games that they have to make, and that's a very, very well-curated field. So North Shore School District just made a decision that they're going to upgrade all their high school fields, including Inglemore, to the sports turf. Why? To avoid rainouts, to make the fields more playable. The soccer lacrosse field right up the street at Big Fin Hill, which is the same green belt as St. Ned's, turf and lights. So we would all love to play on natural grass in this environment. The reality is that it's just not realistic and probably not fiscally responsible. I want to call your attention to the presentation that the City Manager Rob Colaizzi and staff put together regarding the ballpark project last year. They referred to the shoulder season, meaning the fall and the early spring, sports including soccer, cricket, baseball, softball, and lacrosse. During the shoulder season, darkness comes at the same time people are getting off of work. That's relevant since many of the coaches that participate in these youth activities are, in fact, people that have 9-to-5 jobs. So I wanted to call your attention to the handout that I just provided to you, which I believe was also introduced as part of the update that the city manager is going to provide, and call your attention to the fact that of the hours available, 85, based on the current lease proposal agreement, 27 of those hours are potentially hours that would be affected by our climate, by the northwest darkness early at 4:30 in the afternoon. 33% or 32%, a third of what we're talking about. The only reason we keep calling this out is because as we look at this opportunity to create a field and increase the capacity in the area, we want to make sure that we maximize that capacity in the right way. So obviously, asking you to continue moving forward with the ballparks project, and also asking to make sure that it's a usable field, which in Kenmore means that we need to do a sports turf and a lighting solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stuart, is it Hogue? Hogue?
Thank you, Council. My address is 21624 2nd Ave Southeast Bothell. I'm just here to support the...
Your name, please.
My name is Stuart Hogue, H-O-G-G-E. Just here to support the ball field. I have 2 sons that participated in Little League. The fields that we have now are inadequate. I mean, so many times this year already we've been rained out and we had to drive outside of our the area that we use for playing ball. We go to Bothell. We have to go as far as Redmond sometimes just to be able to play baseball because there's no adequate facilities here in Kenmore. Even the ball fields that we have up at Bastille, it's just a total swampy mess. I like St. Edward's. I've been there. I don't know how many times. I bike, I hike, I do all those things too. But there's already an existing place that could be fixed up for these kids and for the safety of the ball players. That my kids are going to be going to Kenmore Junior High, and that facility there is not really adequate at all for baseball. There's enough room at the park for everybody, for baseball, for the hiking, for the birds, for the bugs, the microbes in the soil. I hope that this project goes forth. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hogue.
Keith Dunbar.
Good evening. Keith Dunbar, 14310 93rd Ave in Kirkland. Mayor and members of the council, I'm a neighbor and 26-year resident of Fin Hill and a frequent user of St. Edward State Park. Professionally, I'm a retired chief of planning for the National Park Service Pacific West region, where I had 35 years of service. We're truly blessed to have a national system of parks, national parks, state parks, and municipal and county parks that serve the citizens of our nation by providing for publicly protected spaces that preserve our natural and cultural heritage and provide a variety of passive and active recreation uses for our citizens. Each park in our national system of parks provides a unique benefit that frames our experience in that place. So too does each level of government have an important role to play in the park experience they provide to our citizens. National parks preserve special places of national import because of their unique natural and cultural attributes and provide an appropriate level of public use and enjoyment. State parks across the nation also protect important and natural cultural resources within each state, including ours, and provide an appropriate level of recreation use, both passive and active, while ensuring park values are upheld. Local parks, which are established and funded by municipal and county governments or special park and recreation districts, provide a critically important third tier of public park lands that provide valuable open space, promote a variety of recreation uses close to home, and protect natural and cultural features that are deemed important to our local communities. What concerns me is the proposal for the City of Kenmore to utilize the informal grass ball field of St. Edwards for formal organized ball field use, complete with artificial turf and lighted space, including occupying fields up till 9 p.m. at night, well after the traditional dusk closing of the state park. This proposal is imposing what is a more traditional local municipal organized recreation function on a unit of our state park system. Synthetic turf and lighted ball fields are not an appropriate use of a state park. It is a municipal park function that belongs on fields that are owned and operated by the city or on an established local park and recreation district, either of which would have a levy and bond authority that utilizes local government revenues to advance active recreation and other park activities and functions within the Kenmore community. Much like the agreement that Lake Sammamish State Park has with soccer organizations in Issaquah and Sammamish, grass, unlighted fields at the state park are leased and utilized during certain times of the year for active use. However, the integrity of the state park is maintained. I would urge the City of Kenmore and Washington State Parks Recreation Commission to reach a compromise accord where an improved grass field can host local organized recreation while not impinging on the integrity of our valued state park. I also urge the city to aggressively pursue land acquisition opportunities elsewhere in the community where future development of active field space is more appropriate and welcomed. Thanks.
Phyllis Finley.
I'm not checking my phone. I'm setting the timer so I can watch the countdown, so I'm not surprised by but I'll wait until I say my name. I'm Phyllis Finley, 5962 Northeast Arrowhead Drive in Kenmore. Okay, I'm starting. Let's assume two things. Whether we buy into it or not, let's just use this as an assumption for what I'm going to say, and I have 5 points. Let's assume that Little League needs ball fields, and let's assume that the park needs protection. I've heard reason for development is that so Little Leaguers don't have to drive so far, but I read on the Kenmore website, quote, Kenmore is just minutes from Seattle and the east side. You can swiftly get to everywhere from Kenmore, unquote. But not to a Little League ball field, I guess. Number two, there's a shortage of fields. We need some in Kenmore. But I looked on the North Lake Little League website, and they're right now practicing at 7 places in Kenmore. Is that not proportionate to the number of Kenmore residents that play in the league? From the Kenmore website, City Hall sets the bar for future development and reflects the community's interest in sustainable development. Kenmore City Hall received LEED Gold certification. On the other hand, the city is willing to drain a wetland, destroy a buffer, interrupt the biodiversity corridor, remove natural turf, and clear-cut the north parking lot to add more parking. Sustainable development? To date, the city has not addressed the fact that St. Ed's is designated as a biodiversity corridor by the state and also includes Big Fin Hill and Denny Parks. The city has an obligation to regulate development in this corridor in a manner that protects it and not degrades it. Under state law, the City Council has a legal and public duty to be flexible in balancing development needs and environmental needs in a manner that allows for existence of both. If the council modified the ball field development at St. Ed's to a high-quality grass field with no lights improve the drainage that currently dumps pollution into the wetland and stream, you could meet both community needs and environmental needs. Modifying the ball field development in this matter could save millions of taxpayer dollars. How much money has been spent to date by the city is between $250,000 and $500,000. Is that a fair guess? I don't know. Couldn't find that on the website. There are 29 schools in Kenmore, each with a field. I think Kenmore maybe could choose 2 of those fields in those schools to upgrade. I don't think the school district would object. I encourage you to make a decision with our tax dollars that benefits the highest number of diverse citizens, causes the least disruption to our park. It is possible to meet the needs of both sports and in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Findlay.
Doug Levy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Doug Levy, 15619 62nd Place Northeast. I think the gap in the discussion I'm hearing so far tonight is there seems to be a testimony attitude that this is an either-or proposition. And I guess what I would share to you tonight is, as someone who is frequently in St. Edward State Park, who uses the natural and solitude assets of that park, those are going to be there the same as they are now with a playground for kids, the same as they were before with a pool and tennis courts and 4 fields at Bastille, the same as they were before when those 2 fields, they're not new, they're not being developed, they're not bludgeoning existing nature. Those are fields that existed before. And so the idea is, how can we take this wonderful space, I think we all agree it's wonderful space, and make it something that works for all of us. The gentleman who spoke before about state parks, one of their main missions, their guiding principles, is that state parks are for all of us. So can we do a good job taking existing fields that have deteriorated and make them better? I would submit that the answer is yes. Some of what you've heard tonight, develop fields, well, they already exist. Change the use? No, those fields were there before. Cricket can't play on turf? Well, that's not necessarily true. AstroTurf, I haven't heard that phrase in a couple of decades. The idea that synthetic turf is a health issue, I think the lady who spoke was referring to the crumb rubber fields. That's not what's proposed here. So I would suggest that we have a way to do a lot of these things very well and keep the solitude and keep the assets of this park that so many have testified to, and provide a playable space for all these kids who stood up before. And frankly, what I would say to you, it's not about those kids. It's about their kids 20, 30 years from now. And so those who are worried about $4.869 million, what I would say to you is, to me, that's a pretty good investment of my tax money when I see existing fields that are being paid for by the community not used. I'd rather have them used, amortize that cost over a long period of time, do this responsibly and well so that all of us together can use that park. And I would personally commit to you that I think that's entirely possible. So I would encourage you to go forward. I think the kids that are in the audience tonight are but a small fraction of those who, frankly, don't have time to come to these city council meetings and often won't. They're the silent majority. They're the ones who are asking for this. They're part of that 525. And it's not just baseball, it's soccer, it's lacrosse. And yes, there will be public use of those fields. They won't be locked up 24/7 for the leagues at all. There will be plenty of time for the public. So I'm very much encouraging you to go forward, and thanks for holding this public comment and having that debate tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Levy.
Elizabeth Mooney.
Elizabeth Mooney, 5934 Northeast 201st Street, Kenmore. So a couple things tomorrow, just in case you want to know something happy before I criticize you for the artificial lighted turf at St. Edward, because it's an open space for birds and bats and people in quiet and solitude. But before I tell you that, tomorrow, if you want to come, we're going to do an air pollution, environmental justice meeting with Dr. Robin Evans Agnew here at 10 o'clock. And if you'd love to greet him, I would appreciate it. Anybody is welcome. It's going to be 9th graders coming in July to learn about science and air monitoring as just an environmental education. They're coming from Tacoma, and maybe there's some kids from our neighborhood that would like to join them. So any parents who want to do an environmental project with PERC, please call me or something like that. Ask our council members. So there are a lot of places in this township of Kenmore that should be an environmental steward that you could probably put an artificial turf field. There are not a lot of options. There are not a lot of places in this township where you can put a 100-year-old forest ecosystem, and that's what you have up at St. Edward Park. I did not invite any small children because I really think this is an adult decision and that we owe it to the children and the grandchildren to make the wisest decision. Because I'll bet you in these petitions that I've been handing out, you haven't seen the 200 to 300 people who want... Am I interrupting you, or am I just talking too much?
Keep going.
If you put a lighted turf field in a 100-year-old forest ecosystem, it will not be the same. It's a state park. It's not Kenmore City Council's park. It's not Little League's park. It's not my park. But if you want to destroy that, guess how many years it's going to take to get another 100-year-old forest that'll have the protection. You know, these kids have all learned about endangered species. In 20 years, you could have the marbled murrelets there. How many people want the marbled murrelets at St. Edward Park instead of an artificial turf? Anybody want that? Are there any people who want to clap for the birds? Hey, there are a few in the audience here. And the odds of getting a 100-year-old forest back that's quiet, that can provide the solitude that Mr. Ratliff was talking about, is 0. The NIMBY, not in my backyard, is the forest. And I am speaking for the animals and for the forest. They don't want an artificial turf.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney.
Is it Tanel Marks? Is Tennille? Sorry.
My name is Tennille Marks. I'm a Kenmore resident, 14923 73rd Avenue. I'm also a mom and a naturopathic physician. I attended school at Bastyr, and I'm a business owner here in Kenmore. I moved to Kenmore. Well, actually, let me start off by saying thank you so much for the mayor and the council members for supporting this community and really making improvements to supporting community in Kenmore. I moved here 17 years ago, and there wasn't much community. I have to say I was kind of shocked at I thought, what is going on in Kenmore? But I'm so happy to see all these community aspects moving forward. And that's why I'm here today. I am in support of this project because I think it builds community. I think we're still lagging in Kenmore compared to other towns surrounding us. And I just want to say a little bit on a personal level, just because I've seen a lot of comments out there. I've heard a lot of comments tonight that this is a Little League agenda, that this is, maybe a male ego-driven agenda, or that our kids are entitled brats, I've heard, that want a safe field to play on. But let me say this. I'm not a sports person. I didn't play sports growing up. I never understood sports. I didn't understand why people were so crazy about sports. But that changed when I had my son, because I think he was dreaming about baseball in the womb. And once he started to walk, that's all he wanted to do and has ever wanted to do was to play baseball. And let me tell you, my mind has been changed over the years of attending 2 to 3 baseball games a week for 7 years. It's not about sports and jocks and egos and all of this. The value that it gives to our kids is undescribable. And I think we all know that. Even the people who are opposing this understand the value of sports. So I won't go into that. But, you know, my son's best friends and best memories are from playing baseball. And I have to admit, even my husband and I's best friends have now come from that baseball community. So again, I think it's building community that I'm really wanting. And it's really trying to understand the other side. You know, I understand now what I didn't understand before. I understand the environmental concern, and I hope that the other side can understand our concerns and our needs and our wants, because really, if we're looking at community, we need to look at all the interests of the community. And like people have said prior to me, this is a big piece of land. We've got lots of land to roam, to be quiet.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
Okay. Again, just please, this is not about baseball. It's about kids, and it's really about community. So I urge you to support this project.
Thank you, Mrs. Marks.
Grayson Hulse. Grayson, is it Hulse?
My name is Grayson, and I think we need more fields because 5 of our baseball games have been rained out.
We actually used to be in Kenmore, now we live in South Bothell, but Grayson goes to Morelands Elementary.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Doug Hill. Oh, hold on real quick. Doug Hill, not here. Peter Lance? Okay.
Before you start, if I could just make a quick announcement. So the mayor needs to go to catch a plane, I believe, and the deputy mayor isn't quite here yet. So for those of you not so familiar with me, I'm Milton Curtis. I was ex-deputy mayor, and so I'm going to be the pinch hitter here in the middle. And let me give you a choice. I'm probably not supposed to do that, and somebody will tell me if I'm doing the wrong thing. But our procedures allow us to cut off public comment in 30 minutes. And the reason is we still have about another hour and a half worth of our business to do. So when all of you are done, we still have some decisions to make. So we have a choice. One is to stop now and have everybody who wants to speak wait and talk at the end. The other option that I'm going to give you is to do speed dating. So how about if we do 1 minute each for all the rest of the people who want to speak? And if you have something new to say, do it. So this is going to be risky. Okay, nobody's ever done this before to the best of my knowledge. So if you would like to wait to the end to speak, so this is only for the people who are still on the list to speak. Nobody else gets to vote. So all of you, how many people are still need to speak? Because I heard there were 25 that, so we still have
9. We've had a couple more sign up, so 9 more.
9 more. So that's almost half an hour yet. So
actually, excuse me, 10 more.
10 more.
10 more.
So those people who are scheduled, listed to speak for U10, how many of you would like to wait to the end to give your 3 minute? Okay, I see 1, 2. All right. For those 10 who would like to do the speed round, 1 minute for each of you, 10 minutes each. I see. What's that? So I at least see, it looks like about four or five. Okay. That wasn't one of the options. So according to our procedures, the only option we have is delay to the end. So I'm creating an option that has never existed before. So let me ask the council, do we have any consensus amongst the group here that we would like to do the 1 minute speed? I see at least one thumb up, two thumbs.
Well, how about this?
A comment?
I
Go
do.
ahead.
How about we just say, if you want to speak now, you have 1 minute. If you want to wait till the end, you have 3. That's easy.
There we go.
So, your pick.
Okay. All right. So because this was new information before you walked up here, we'll give you the old rules, the grandfathered rules, the 3 minute rule. And then after that, so I think, does the council okay with that proposal? So if you want now, it's 1 minute. If you want to wait to the end and do 3 minutes, that works as well. So for the clerk, you'll keep track of things, and you still get the 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Peter Lance. I live at 6501 Northeast 151st Street, Kenmore. My concern is entirely different than anybody's presented tonight. Mine is about the Daniels Lodge. This is your big, big deal. Do you guys think it's a big deal? This is you. Raise your hands, council members, if you think the lodge is a good deal.
Actually, this is comment period to the council.
I'm asking you guys questions. I think it's a huge deal. You have a bellwether project up here. I opposed it, but I fully understand you've got a historic opportunity here. This is the big deal. This is a potential place where the big companies are going to come and have their conferences. Their owners are going to come here if you do it right. If that lodge is allowed to be nurtured, and it's going to depend on you. This is now your park. There are concerns about parking that are not yet sorted out. I left on, you all have the hearing examiner's comments from the appeal that my group was behind. It should give you pause that even though you have world-class planners and the best traffic engineers working on these things, it might not work out. The parking plans of Daniels just are realistically need to be proven. And he may not be able to succeed with his off-site parking. He may need your help. You may need to revisit this to make that thing succeed. And I don't say this facetiously. I think you folks should go slow and let this thing, make sure Daniels succeeds. And if he needs help with parking, some of this parking that is going to be allocated to the Little League might be something you dearly wish you had left to dole out to the Daniels project, because that's a $50 million project. This is a $4 million spend that has not happened yet. It could happen somewhere else if it has to. But I don't think I think it's very unwise to have two projects consuming unknown amounts of parking in the park, or wishing you had it, without making sure Daniels is up and running and really being a fine functioning operation and all that it should be. I think you're really playing fast and loose in this park that you guys now manage. You could also, we have an opportunity here to test part of the parking problem. When this ball field goes in, you're going to lose the overflow parking. The overflow parking for your concerts. You can practice now. Don't use that, and see how the off-site parking works this summer and next summer. See if you can even make off-site parking work and do the things that you want to do in that park. Maybe you're going to quit the concerts in the park. Maybe that's just going to go away when you lose the overflow parking. But you've got real parking issues.
We're at 3 minutes.
Okay. Lastly, if you read the sound parking study for the ball fields, that one, which is a critique of the city's ball field parking study, they're vastly different in their view. They're 100% different in how much parking demand they think they're going to need which tells me parking is just wildly, it's a dismal science. They don't know where they're at. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're now to the 1-minute crowd. And so we have the list, and the clerk will keep track of 1 minute. So everybody who wanted to do that will call your name. If you want to do the 1 minute, jump up there. And in fact, why don't we call the second person so they can be in line waiting?
Okay. Is Andrew Smith, did you still want to speak? No. Alan Marks? Next will be Brent Anderson. It'll be Alan Marks.
Yep, the first person come up. Second person will be in line.
The next will be Brent Anderson.
Hi there. My name's Alan Marks. I'm at 14923 73rd Avenue here in Kenmore. I've raised and grown up and live in Kenmore, Finn Hill area for the last 40 years. I'm not much of a public speaker, but with 1 minute, I think I could do this. My main point is going to be how large this park is. I spent much time at this park. There's a lot of area. There's hiking trails. There's a complete huge lawn on the other side of the monastery, which will become a hotel from what I understand. The area where these ball fields are going to go is a pretty small parcel compared to what we have there. And it's already a field. There's no trees on it. It's all open. The turf is not going to affect wildlife. I didn't just call it AstroTurf, did I? Whatever it is. I don't see how this is going to affect our deer, our coyotes, or our songbirds.
Mr. Marks, you're at 1 minute.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you. So the next person, give that name again.
So Brent Anderson, and then we'll have Ann Anderson.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Brent Anderson, 16304 81st Place Northeast. I think we have a detail that hasn't been mentioned yet with regards to the granting on the ball fields. My understanding is that there's a $750K grant from the state RCO, and RCO is Recreation and Conservation Office. So I want to call out that word conservation. From where we were looking back in the records, we believe it was first publicly introduced on January 11th as an agenda item, 2016 actually. The plan then was to use the PAUE, Public Access Utility Exemption, to get around the normal behavior. Unfortunately, clearer heads prevailed on that one, and that was...
Mr. Anderson, you're at 1 minute.
Okay. Well, the main point is that I wanted to be present physically to say that we preferred that space to be left natural and to call attention to the granting, specifically being with regards to conservation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Ann Anderson, and next we'll have Janet Hay.
All right, thank you.
Please won't start my time until I fix this. Okay. Hi, my name is Ann Anderson at 16304 81st Place Northeast in Kenmore. We are against the ball field on our wetlands. An example of how the RCO grant could be used would be to improve the drainage system that addresses the existing pollution problems that currently exist at the site. According to the city's own environmental study, oil and heavy metals from the cars entering both Bastille and the park drain into the field, causing it to be designated a quote-unquote pollution discharge area. Per figure 4 of your August 2016 report. These pollution problems should be expected to get worse as traffic increases due to the hotel. And then you could modify the plan to a single high-quality grass field, so it would be a win-win for everybody. My second point is that St. Edward State Park is on the Washington Heritage Register and National Register of Historic Places due to unique physical features. And it's a package deal that not only includes the seminary building, but it also includes the landscape that adjoins the seminary building. So if you mess with the landscape, if you alter the landscape, then you're violating the Washington Heritage Register and National Register of Historic Places. So it's a package deal. So Please leave our wetlands alone, and you can partner with the school districts. And the city said that you don't want to partner with the school districts and improve their fields because it's not city land. So let's think about our future kids and keep it an open, natural space for our future generations of kids. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
We've got Janet Hay, and then Francis Hill will be next.
Janet Hayes, 6303 Northeast 181st, number 301.
Okay.
I'm here to talk about the lights. First of all, I've been studying the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife interactive map, priority habitat species map. Anyone can go on it. You can click on an area, you can click on a parcel and find out every bit of environmental information you need regarding it. If you go the whole boundary of St. Edward's Park, it is classified as a biodiversity corridor for terrestrial habitat. The very middle of that corridor is where the ball field is. And now we're going to put lights there. Lights serve as a bug vap.
We're at 1 minute.
What?
We're at 1 minute.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
well,
you.
Look at the map, guys, and it does rain at St. Edward's Park, just as much up there as here.
Thank you so much.
Francis Hill, and then John Hendrickson.
Does it start after I introduce myself?
After your name and address.
Hi, I'm Frances Hill. I'm from 15602 East Shore Drive in Linwood, and I'm concerned about the city using the state park for something for the city. But guess what? There's good news, because on April 19th, Dean Widener, president of Widener Investment Services, reported to the council about his plan to develop Lake Point. This is over here. And his plan includes athletic facilities, a gym, ball fields that would be safe and plentiful. So everybody gets what everybody wants. I urge you to explore that. And this idea of St. Edward's reminds me of Cinderella's stepsisters. And they were, had the slipper, and they're going, I'll make it fit. I'll make it fit. And it's not going to fit. And St. Edward's is one of those. And there's other ideas for shoes that fit. So let's get the shoe that fits. Thank you.
John Hendrickson, and then Danny Howe.
John Hendrickson, Kenmore, Washington. Again, tonight, your decision as a council to cut it down to 1 minute shows how much the council doesn't respect the public. You've moved the citizen comments back, so you have presentations for a half hour where we always had it in the front. Don't respect the public. And the important thing is it leads to bad decision making, which you can see in this whole ball field plan. Started in September of 15 with Doug Levy's coercion letter, I think violates the Supreme Court case in Nolan versus Tigard, using coercion to force state parks to give you the field, otherwise you won't give them the permits. You rush to pass the environmental process to get around the environmental laws. You work to change the PAW exemption so that you can exempt yourself from all environmental compliance. A legislative act found to violate state law. Now, after almost 2 years, you find out it's $4.8 million. That money needs to go down in front of Lake Point. They want to...
Mr. Hendrickson, you're at 1 minute.
They want to let you develop, have that as a public space. That's where we need to develop. You put grass in there for a fraction of the price. Everyone can play, and we'll have more facilities and more money.
Thank you.
Danny Howe, and then Derek Cohn.
I'm Danny Howe, 15609, 62nd Place Northeast. You guys don't need to hear me bloviate, so I'm going to let two of my players talk for 30 seconds apiece.
Hi, I'm Ray Egbert, and I'd like to say that I think I speak for all of my teammates when I vocalize that baseball is really a gift for the youth of our community. It allows people to have great leadership experiences and develop new skills, stay physically fit, and have a great way to become active, and also meet new people and make great friends. By renovating these fields at St. Edward's, I'm hoping that we can spread this gift and these blessings by encouraging more people to play. Thank you. 15 seconds.
Okay, I'm Caleb Beals. I definitely 100% agree with Raiden. One of these issues are that when we want to have fun and be leaders in our community, it's really hard when like these fields have like rocks that when you slide, you get cut up on your legs and you roll your ankle every 10 minutes. Like it's just not. It's like something that we need to improve, and we want. So
you guys are at 1 minute. Thank you.
So our teammates and our future sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters can have a nice place to have fun.
Thank you, team, for coming out.
Derek Cohn, and then no one else has signed up.
Hi, Derek Cohn, right over here on 66th, born and raised in 1981 up on 72nd Avenue, Arrowhead Elementary, Kenmore Junior High, and Kenmore High School. Blessed to be back in the town now, raising my 2 kids here and coaching my son's t-ball team as my dad did for me. Grew up playing on all these ball fields, St. Edward's, Arrowhead, Moreland, Shelton View, Forest Grant, on and on, Lockwood. And the idea of having a high-quality Little League baseball field in Kenmore, to me, makes perfect sense. I don't know the ins and outs of exactly the best place to put it, but I do know that those baseball fields have been there since 1981 when I started playing. I'm not hearing a change of use here going on. And I share the vision of Kenmore with you all since as long as I can remember, and now that I moved back for Lake Point development business in Kenmore, making it a destination. And I think a destination town like Kenmore should have high-class Little League baseball fields. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, did we have anybody else sign up?
No one else signed up. No.
Now, there was somebody who wanted the 3-minute deal at the end. Do we need to save that for you and not forget you? You did your thing. Okay, very good. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for letting us know what you think. This is the job of government, to take everybody's opinions and do the best we can. And without your input, we don't have a chance of doing this right. So thank you, everybody who spoke tonight. So we are going to move on to approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Do I have a second? We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. So unanimous consent agenda.
Nigel, thank you.
And moving on to the business agenda, we're going to have a report from Rob Carlinzi, City Manager, on status update to the St. Edward Ball Field Improvement Project.
Thank you, Councilmember Curtis. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge Debbie Bent, our Community Development Director. She has put a lot of work into this project over the last year and a half. And she's been our project lead, and she's done a great job, and she's followed the State Parks Commission all over the state for the last 18 months. And unfortunately, she couldn't make it tonight. She had some family matters to attend to. So I'll try to do my best to give an equivalent update on the project tonight. And I have with me Senior Planner Lauri Anderson and Parks Project Manager Ann Stanton here that know some of the details if you have questions for them. But just to give you a little history, so back in late 2015, you as the City Council directed us to pursue with the state a lease to get the ball fields renovated for athletic uses. In January of 2016, we brought forward a conceptual ball field renovation plan, and for the most part, that plan hasn't changed. It's still proposing 2 baseball diamonds, 2 youth soccer fields, and the capability for a larger soccer field as well. We have had quite a few meetings on this subject. We had a community open house and public meeting in February of 2016. There was quite a bit of turnout for that. And there's been multiple State Parks Commission meetings. And we've been working with the state parks on their questions, their concerns. And I think we've been purposely taking the planning process for the environmental review slowly so that we make sure that we cover all those bases. The environmental review is a very important part of this project, and we want to make sure we get it right. Just to quickly go over some of the state park policy support that we can point to. Their transformation strategy that they adopted several years ago complements what we're doing, as well as some of the goals in the plan for the park itself. The CAMP is what it's called. I always forget what it stands for. But the planning document that was adopted back in 2008 talks about improving the ball fields and using them for athletic uses. We also have city council policies and goals that also point to what we're doing. And here, what you see here on the screen before you is the plan for renovating the ball fields. And yes, the plan does have synthetic turf, lighting. It has all the fields I mentioned earlier, plus it also allows for a cricket pitch. To give you kind of a status update where we're at, last month the Washington State Parks Commission discussed the issue, and their question that they had a while back had to do with the effect of lighting on nocturnal animals. And so State Parks is conducting a nocturnal animal study, and in particular they're looking at bat species. Right now there is the common brown bat that is already in the park. I'm told that particular species of bat is not light sensitive or affected by the lights. However, there may be other species of bats in the park, and there are one or two species that are what are called state priority species that are also light sensitive. And so State Parks has agreed to do what they're calling a bat study. And they're proposing to look at that this month and the month of July to see if those state priority light sensitive bats are there. And if they're there, the lighting could affect that species of bats. And we want to wait and see what the report says, but if the report does come out and say that light sensitive state priority bat species are there, we may be recommending that you do not proceed with lit ball fields. But again, I think it's too soon to jump to that conclusion because I can't predict what the report will actually say. The report may very clearly and definitively say that there's this species of bat, it's state priority species, and it's light sensitive. And if it's that clear cut, then my recommendation would be to not have lit fields in the park, and then just proceed with the rest of the plan. So our recommendation right now is to continue as you've been directing us, including negotiating the terms for a 20-year lease with state park staff, and also prepare materials for land use permit application. That would include a SEPA checklist process and a variance from our critical areas. Right now, the existing footprint of the ball fields is in a wetland. Our proposal, do you want to correct me on that? Oh, okay. Right now, the existing ball field is in a wetland. This actually takes it out of a wetland. I heard a comment earlier tonight that we would be draining a wetland. That is not true. We'd actually be taking the ball field out of the wetland. It would still be in the wetland buffer, however, as the ball field currently is. And so we would need to mitigate for the fact that it would be in a wetland buffer. And we would also need to apply for what they call a critical areas variance. And that's a pretty rigorous process with requirements and mitigation that would go with it. And so our land use application that we would apply for would include that critical areas variance so that we could be in the buffer and the accompanying mitigation.
Councilmember Nigel had a question.
Oh, sure. I was just, could you describe a little bit more what the mitigation would look like for going into the buffer?
Sure. In fact, I have
more of a plan on what the mitigation would be specifically.
You bet. And I even have a slide in the back here just in case I was asked that question. But you can see on this map here the buffer impact. You can also see where the existing wetlands are there at the top. We would, as part of the mitigation, we would actually enhance that wetland and improve the quality of it. Right now, it's grassy field, or a lot of it is. And so we would change that so it's no longer a grassy field that people are walking on, and we'd actually make it more favorable for habitat. In addition to improving the existing wetland, we would also enhance the buffers around the wetland. And we would remove invasive plant species and replant the area with native plants and improve foraging for the animals in the area. And you can see that our buffer impact is about 40,000 square feet. If you combine our wetland enhancement with the buffer enhancement, we're looking at about 55,000 feet of mitigation. If I may continue, parking is a big issue. We're taking a look at that. We had a parking study done, and then Washington State Parks also had a study done, and we're kind of comparing notes between the two studies. Stay tuned on that. State Parks, their study is suggesting that we may need to add additional stalls than what we're proposing, but those stalls may need to be added over time instead of immediately. So we're looking at that right now, and we'll have something more definitive to propose when we actually turn in our land use application for that.
Sure.
I wanted to just add something about the parking. The study that State Parks did was looking at background growth in the park. It was not directly looking at the ball field impact, but instead the growth in the park over the next 20 years, assuming a certain level of growth, 1% a year in population growth in the community that would translate to a 1% increase in park users over that same time period. So to some degree, it's looking at two different issues. So the additional number of stalls that they are suggesting has to do with background park growth over 20 years versus the ball field impact today and over the next, say, 5 years, which is what the original study looked at. So we're doing sort of a comparison and waiting for some more analysis there.
And here's a tentative schedule for the variance permit process and the SEPA process. So late June, maybe first half of July, we're going to submit a critical area variance permit and land use application and accompanying SEPA checklist. And hopefully by the end of July, that BAT study will come in, and we'll be able to incorporate that into our SEPA documents. SEPA stands for State Environmental Policy Act. And then once we are able to wrap that in, the BAT study into our SEPA documents, then in August we'll be able to issue a notice of application for the permit with a 21-day comment period. And then in September, based on that comment period, we plan on issuing a draft SEPA determination. And that will have a 14-day public comment period. And then in October, we'll issue a final SEPA determination and variance permit decision with a 21-day appeal period. And then in November, it's possible that the Washington State Parks Commission will consider action on the lease. They don't want to consider action on the lease until the SEPA determination has been made. So they have a commission meeting in September, but based on this schedule, we won't be able to have SEPA done by their September meeting. So it's looking more like our SEPA process, and our SEPA determination will be made in time for their November meeting. And then our recommendations are continuing to move forward for the terms of a 20-year lease as the project is currently designed. And then also to continue to prepare the application materials for the land use piece of it, including the critical area variance permit and SEPA materials. And then if this bat study clearly and definitively says that there are light-sensitive state priority bats near the ball fields, then our recommendation would be to not include lights as part of the project. But again, these studies, I don't know how clear and definitive it will be. So before we make this call and before we decide to do or not do lights, I think we need to wait for the study to come in. And then the last comment there, or the last piece of our recommendation is in July, we plan on giving you an update on our capital improvement program. There's going to be several amendments based on refined cost estimating on projects, as well as now better known revenue sources, including grants from the state and the county for these ball fields. So in July, we'd like to give you an update on the CIP and capital improvement plan and get your update on that, or get your direction on a capital improvement plan in July.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, it is. In fact, I'll go to this slide. You ready for this? Questions.
There we go. That was what I was going to say. We'll do the questions next, and it then looks like what you need from us is some direction on staff recommendations for next steps. So we'll do questions first. Anybody? Stacey?
I guess I have more comments. So.
Comments will work.
All right. So, this decision isn't an easy one. So thank you. I know most people have left, but thank you for everybody who's commented. That helps me a lot. So I guess my first comments are as a mom of kids who play soccer. There's plenty of little, practice on Kenmore Elementary's dirt field type ball fields around. But once you get into the rainy weather, once you get into the dark weather, you have to scatter out of Kenmore, and I've had to take my kid out of soccer once because the lighting fields were out in Maltby or somewhere, and I couldn't get there. And I had to not sign up my son, a different son, once because the practices were going to be out in Redmond, and I wouldn't be able to get there. So I think that, if you're just going for decent weather in decent lighting, you can kind of cobble things together. But the missing piece, I think, in this area is having a field that you can use all the way around and that's lit. I think our documents show that having it lit will increase the use 36%. That's big. So as a project, I would like to see a project that does have artificial turf and does have lighting. Is St. Edward's Park the right place for that? I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to skip on lighting. I do agree with the go for it on the lease thing. But if you had to ask today, just take lighting out, I wouldn't agree with that. We haven't really looked at alternates. I have questions still on the bat study because the lodge and the parking lot will be lit all the way around, and apparently that wasn't an issue. Also, the Department of Fish and Wildlife website says that the bats around here hibernate from beginning of October to April, May, so maybe the lighting would only be like 2 or 3 weeks that you would need lighting that might affect bats. So there are just enough questions that I wouldn't say we're just taking the lighting off the table without any further discussions. But I'm also not agreeing that we would put lighting somewhere that clearly shouldn't have lighting. So keep that out there.
Councilmember Smith.
Thanks, Rob, for the update and the presentation, and I appreciate all the comments we received this evening. There was a lot of good perspectives, and I realize that it's one of those things that for a lot of people, there are no easy answers. They're just trying to figure out the best way to kind of reach the conclusion and the need that we're trying to address. This is something, as many of you know, it's been an issue for over a decade, and it's been addressed at the camp level which, by the way, does stand for Classification and Management Plan at the state park. And this is a project that really does fulfill a lot of the partnership requirements and partnership ideals that are associated with a lot of what state parks is doing. As you discussed earlier in your presentation, it falls into line with our PROS plan, which is about trying to identify recreation. It talks about acquisition and how you go about doing those. It talks about the unique difficulties that we have by being so late to the incorporation game and the constraints we have. And I think what's important to me is that this park is 600 and some acres, or I should say 300 and some acres, and I mean, I've been using it for 30 years, and there's so many different unique areas and aspects of this park that you can find your place. And I don't think it's unreasonable at all to see us trying to better utilize a site in an environment where we have numerous constraints that we're addressing through improvements to the orchard, to the grotto. We'll be involved with the granting process on shoreline enhancement, to the Nuns Garden. You saw the wetland enhancements, and I think it just makes sense. I think it's very well thought out. It has been through the ringer at every level, and it has been for years. And so I encourage us to, as a staff, to keep moving forward. I think it's a good community builder, and I think it just makes sense, and I'm fully supportive of continuing forward on it.
Yeah, one other thing for general information. I've heard it asked, well, why don't we just improve the Bastyr ball fields? The problem with that is we only have what I call a short-term lease with Bastyr University. They don't want to lease to us for more than a certain planning horizon, and right now that's 2025. And so we wouldn't want to put this kind of an investment on a ball field that we might lose in 2025. That doesn't make financial sense. It needs to be a long-term situation if we're going to make this type of a capital investment. As far as investing in schools or school district fields, those fields are largely in use now. They're used for practices. And so it's at St. Edward State Park where you can increase the capacity the most, because right now the ones at St. Edward aren't being used. So that's where you get the most bang for your dollar as far as increasing capacity goes. Also, the fields around elementary schools, they also will have their issues as well, as including being near critical areas and wetlands and being near residential areas that will not want to have bright lights next to them. And so that's kind of one of the arguments why we're really looking at St. Edward State Park.
I'd like to add one more
Yeah,
thing to that,
sure.
and that is that currently our Little League, for example, shares the school fields with 3 other groups, so they get 1/4 of a field on the school fields. Mm-hmm. So even if we did 8 fields, we'd still be back to 2 effective fields that wouldn't be adding capacity, but would be just a better quality field than it is now.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Herbig and then Councilmember Sperry.
So did we I mean, we've been talking about this for a little bit now. Have we, when we started this off, did we just assume that we would need artificial turf, or did we take a look at what it might take to make grass work at that location? Or did we just assume because of the wetlands that drainage just wouldn't work on that site?
What I had been hearing from the community is getting the field so you can use it in the shoulder seasons and even year-round, but getting the field playable in the early spring and into the fall, you really need turf to be able to do that. If you have natural grass, you can have it drain well, but if it's raining and wet, it's still difficult to play on. So what I had been hearing was the need for more year-round play. And turf, and for that reason, lighting and turf go hand in hand, because if the turf gets you into the darker months and the wetter months, then you need lighting to go with it to make that investment worthwhile as well.
And going to the turf then, there were some comments or some concerns raised about the turf. Can you clarify what the fill would be in the turf?
Right, yeah, we've heard in recent years that crumb rubber might be hazardous to health. So we're steering away from crumb rubber. We're going to be using organic fill material. We haven't decided yet. It'll either be cork, coconut fiber, or what they call rounded silica sand. And those are all inert, more organic type substances that won't have the same questions around them that crumb rubber does.
And one last question. Do we have an estimate on what the cost will be to actually run the lights per hour or and do we have an idea how expensive it's going to be to actually have the lights on?
I don't think we have that tonight.
No, we have data on what other fields charge and what their...
Yeah, no, I saw that. I was just trying to figure out what our actual...
Normally, there's an extra fee for lighting that is a pass-through on the cost, so it's not a cost to the budget.
But we're happy to get that to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sperry?
Thank you. Well, the first thing that I kept thinking of was we started this in 2005, and that's when I took office. And so there is a little bit of Groundhog Day here, deja vu. But I know that technology has changed quite a bit on the lighting, and I think sometimes the image we have of field lighting is the older model, and I was wondering if there's a way to provide some example or explain the type of lighting that's being considered here.
Certainly, and we have done so with the Washington State Parks Commission. And we actually went to a sports complex in Tacoma. And Councilmember Smith, were you there?
Yeah, I was. I don't remember what the complex was, but what was so ideal was that you had new lighting and old lighting. You could stand and look one direction, see one and the other, and it was...
Night
to say it was like night and day is rather punny, but it really was unbelievable how astonishing the difference is, because it's so focused that the spillover off the field is extremely low. And so I know we've presented data or pictures or even that spillover graph, it seems like, I believe.
Yeah.
It's come out, maybe that's something we could have provided.
Yeah, happy to show that to you. We can also send you a link to the Washington State Parks Commission meetings where we've shown that to the commission. But yeah, it is quite a stark contrast between the old technology and the new. The new technology is very directed and has a minimal spillage.
And my second question is, we heard a lot about trees and concern about impact on trees. Could you address the plan? Are we planning on cutting down trees to renovate the fields at all at this point?
No, we are not planning on cutting down any trees. We can build the fields right now and the parking as we're proposing without cutting any trees. There is one possible caveat to that, and that is a couple years from now when the ball fields are up and running, there are some nearby cottonwoods, and they're going to assess those cottonwoods and see if they're a danger, especially near what they call the high target area, if you can believe that. They use that term, high target area, meaning lots of kids congregating. And if they think that branches might fall down on kids, we might need to trim or remove some cottonwoods, but that is unknown at this time. And if we were to remove any cottonwoods, we'd be replacing them. So,
would we be planting trees, like for the mitigation or screening or anything?
Yeah, I believe the plan is to plant some trees.
Mm-hmm. Correct. There's an area in the buffer enhancement that involves some tree planting, and there's also some tree planting down the road. It has to be a very specific height of tree because it needs to preserve the historic view across to the seminary building. But along the road, and then it also needs to provide some view out across the field to preserve that open feeling. But yes, there is tree planting involved.
Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
So somebody during citizen comment brought up cyclone fencing, and I was looking at the plan earlier, and I was trying to figure out, is the field going to be, is there going to be fence going all the way around, or is it just in the behind the backstops?
Yeah, it's just behind the backstops.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a railing fence proposed along the road so that the cars aren't able to drive out onto the field. But that's been the design concept till now.
So you mean something kind of low?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a lower chain link fence. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, Councilmember Daniski.
Just one more comment that we've talked a lot about the lease or not to lease, but we haven't talked about to pay or not to pay. So that's, a whole different conversation that I'm looking forward to, and, that could change things too. It's gotten quite a bit more expensive than we thought when we started this lease off.
Yeah, are you talking about a lease payment to state parks?
No, just the paying for the improvements in general. I think when we started this whole thing, the estimate was somewhere around $2 million, and it's gone up to about $5 million. So that's a big difference from when we started this.
Right, and so my recommendation is to have that discussion in July when we bring the CIP update.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Sperry.
So as a preview of our CIP discussion in July, one of the things that I've been looking for all along, especially as the price, frankly has escalated to a pretty staggering number, is to look at the user groups to partner in some way financially or reach out to organizations, corporations, that kind of thing. I don't feel that this really should be all taxpayer money. I mean, it's not. It's other people's money that people have worked hard for, and there are specific groups that do benefit for this, so I do feel that there should be a contribution.
I think I'm going to then wrap it up with my additions here. My thought is this has been a very long process. I agree, about 12 years. And at each step, new issues have come up, and we've tried to be scientific and thorough as we've addressed each one. And whether it's bats or noise or light, we've just tried to take it one step at a time. And I'm at least inclined to finish this process to get to that point. I agree the budget, what do we do at that point, is a different discussion, but at least we'll check the boxes for all these other bats and SEPA and all the other things that we need to do. So do you have enough direction then from us?
I believe we do.
Okay.
So are you dropping off the lighting immediately at the end of the bat study, or are we going to have discussions? Or?
No, my recommendation is a little bit different than what you see up here, and that is let's wait until the bat study is complete. If the bat study is very clear and definitive that there are light-sensitive state priority bats, our recommendation is probably going to be not do lighting. But let's wait for the bat study to be complete before we make that call.
So that'd be your recommendation, but we'd still be making the decision as council.
That's right.
You just bring it back to us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And with that, then we'll move to the public hearing. So, see, Lauri, are you the only lucky person, or who's anybody going to help you So first we'll have a presentation on land use streamlining project, and every time I read that, I think about streams and hardening, but that's not what this is about.
No.
This is about cleaning up our zoning thing. So proposed changes to the land use terminology used in the zoning district charts and other sections of the zoning code. So we'll do the presentation first and then have a public hearing.
Correct. So, as Dr. Curtis mentioned, tonight is the public hearing on the land use streamlining process. At your meetings on April 17th and May 8th, the project was introduced, and again, the goal is to make the zoning code easier for applicants and staff to use, and it's a continuation of a process that was started several years ago when the land use definitions were changed from about 200 distinct definitions down to about 50 contemporary definitions and installed into the zoning charts in the zoning code. This is all very technical. But the goal is now to go back and finish that job. So 3 zoning districts were completed in 2014, and this is the final culmination of that. So the purpose, again, is to make these changes to the code sections with as little change to the intent of the zoning districts as possible. So it's hopefully the conversion is as minor in terms of policy impact as it could possibly be. And so with that, unless you have questions, you can open the public hearing.
Does the council have any questions? All right, very good. So is anybody signed up to speak at the public hearing?
I have no one signed up.
All right, would anybody like to speak and add their name to the list to the public hearing? Second call, would anybody like to speak for the public hearing? If not, we will close the public hearing and see, what direction do you need from us then?
Right. So unless you have additional questions for me, we intend to bring the ordinance back for your deliberation and potential adoption at a future meeting. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, see, now here's where I think there were some changes. Let me get my...
Yeah, so...
Item A has been moved to the June 26th agenda, so I think we can move on to item B.
Correct. So that would be discussion of paid parental leave policy for city employees. Sarah Bingham, graduate intern, is going to be presenting. With a little help from the city manager.
All right, while Sarah is getting ready here, I would like to introduce Sarah Bingham to you. She just completed her first year of her Master's of Public Administration program at Brigham Young University, and she's with us for the summer for her internship. And at the end of the summer, she'll go back and finish her second year. She's got an undergraduate degree in the humanities, and in particular, American Studies. Is that right? So she's been with us for just like 3 weeks or something like that, and almost a month. And in a short time, she's gotten a lot done, including putting together a draft parental leave policy for you guys to review. You may recall that at the retreat last January, you asked us to look into this. And so when Sarah came along, I thought she'd be the perfect person to analyze it and research it. So she's done just that, and she has a presentation she'd like to share and talk to you about what she's discovered and found.
Thank you for having me. So before we get your feedback as a council, I was just going to review some of the main parts of the policy paper that I put together. And the first is that Kenmore is not under any legal requirement to provide a paid parental leave policy. The main legislation that has created the groundwork right now for the country is the Family Medical Leave Act, and that really only applies to organizations with more than 50 employees, and also only mandates that you provide 12 weeks of unpaid job-protected leave for instances of a new child, and also if you have a sick family member or if you are sick yourself. And so if you look at the city's around us, none of them have any type of paid parental leave policy. They all follow the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, and most of them require that employees use some or all of their accrued leave, their vacation and sick leave, before they can go on unpaid leave. Locally, there have been some larger governments that have put together successful paid parental leave programs, and that includes King County, Seattle, and Shoreline. And Shoreline modeled theirs off of King County, but also didn't just do for new parents, but also any event under the FMLA. So if you are sick yourself or if you have a sick family member, you can have access if you're eligible to this paid leave. And so while we're thinking of that background and how it's growing in popularity in private companies and then also in some governments, it's important to consider the benefits. And there's a growing body of research about this subject, and we've put together a list of benefits that came from a variety of organizations, including the Institute for Women's Policy Research, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the Department of Labor, the Council of Economic Advisors, and a number of academic journals in public health and economics. And these sources all show that paid parental leave are associated with several positive economic, health, and social benefits, including higher employee retention. Women with access to paid leave are more likely to return to work, and family-friendly paid parental leave policies attract higher quality employees. And in addition, there's benefits to children's health, including increased rates of immunizations and longer breastfeeding periods for children whose parents have paid parental leave. And internationally, paid leave has been associated with decreases in infant and child mortality. And it also has been associated with decreases in depression and stress for working mothers. And then there's also the increased gender equality. When a policy applies to both men and women, fathers and mothers, women are less likely to be discriminated against in hiring and promotion processes. And it also normalizes parental leave for fathers, which sometimes in this country has not been the case. But while there's these benefits, it's also very important to consider the costs on this city, as the city has a small number of employees, and then an employee on leave shifting their responsibilities to the other employees can be a considerable burden. And so the cost of this type of policy would depend on the policy that the council would choose if they decide to choose it. And we've come up with two options within the draft, roughly modeled after some of our local paid parental leave policies. Option 1 is modeled after King County, where employees could receive 12 weeks of paid parental leave, but would have to use all but 2 weeks of their accrued leave before the city would supplement anything. And option 2 is modeled more after Seattle, where all eligible employees would receive 6 weeks of paid leave regardless of their leave balances, and then would be able to take 6 additional weeks of leave based on their accrued leave. Option 2 would likely be more costly, but option 2 would also be easier to administer and more equitable across all employees. Because employee salaries are already budgeted for, these costs that we're talking about would be associated with needing to bring in additional temporary work to backfill those employees. And in the past 5 years, around 5 employees have taken accrued leave time for a new child, and in those instances they haven't had to bring in temporary work. They've been able to shift it or temporarily delay it. But if this policy were to come into place, there is a considerable chance that they would have to bring in some temporary work. And so to consider that cost, we've come up with an estimate of needing to fill a mid-level employee for 6 weeks, and that would be around $9,500. So at this time, we'd like to seek the council's direction if they would like to pursue this policy any further, and if they would like to do so, which of the 2 options that we've presented they would like to move forward with. Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig and then Danuski.
First off, just want to say thank you. You did a really bang-up job putting all this together. When I brought this up in January, I was just excited that we got the conversation started in January. I wasn't expecting almost an entire policy paper put together about this, so this is great. And what you laid out is this isn't just the right thing to do for mothers and babies and fathers and families, but it's also the right thing for us to do if we want to compete in the marketplace right now. We're seeing municipalities like Seattle and Shoreline going in this direction, adding this as employee benefit, but we're also seeing this as a growing thing in the private market and the private sector. Large employers are starting to advertise that this is something that they have when they're recruiting. And the job market right now, as we know, is extremely hot. We're competing with a lot of cities, and we don't have quite the budget of, say, the Bellevues of the world, but we may have we may have paid family leave, and they may not. So not only is it right for families, but it's right for us in the long run for employee recruitment and retention, and I'm excited that we're looking at these. I also agree with staff that I think the Seattle model makes a lot more sense just from the implementation and, excuse me, sorry, I'm a little froggy today, and just kind of equity level too, not having to have people sweat over how many weeks they may or may not have and having to bleed everything down before being able to take the leave. The cost of the city, the $9,500, we find that for projects all over, all the time when we bump up against our budget. $9,500 is not the benefits that we'll get for this for our employees far outweigh the $9,500 a year that we might be looking at if we have to backfill somebody, which we haven't done for 5 years. That's a lot of hypotheticals, but our track record shows that we're able to spread the burden to our employees. And if we do need to pay to backfill, the $9,500 estimate is extremely low and absorbable into our budget. So again, thank you, and I'm very supportive of all of this.
Councilmember Danuski.
Thank you for putting this together. Well done. Very detailed. I definitely want to go forward on this, and I'm for option 2. It's more of an equity thing that you may be saving up your vacation to take your baby overseas over Christmas or whatever, and it's almost like punishing you if you're saving up your vacation. So I definitely agree with option 2. I agree with all the benefits that you've had in there, and kind of like another benefit, especially in the first-time mom category, is that first 6 weeks, you're learning how to be a parent. You're in pain. If you were at work, you'd be pumping every hour. You're tired. Nobody's sleeping through the night before 6 weeks, really. Maybe even after 6 weeks. But so you're just not going to get that quality of worker, I don't think, in that first 6 weeks anyway. So, I definitely agree that we should do this.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was a great presentation, by the way, and a great paper. And I will say that it is pretty rare that I actually feel like I can look at a Seattle policy and feel like, I actually like that. And so I actually really liked the Seattle one, and even just as a kind of as a person or a council member, I think 6 or 8 years ago, I don't think I would have really even had much interest in the discussion. And so, but I think this is one of those things where the more you kind of learn about it, the different things you read about it, you kind of just, there's an evolution of thought that you realize it does make sense. And so, so I am in favor of proceeding with the city model, the City of Seattle model on this. And I do have a couple of comments, though. And one is I do believe it will be higher than 9,500 because I think it's reasonable to assume, based on the attractiveness of this, that there will be others that will take advantage of it because it is a real benefit now. And the other thing is, because of that, I would like to, during the budget process, if we could, at least for the next few years, if we could know what that cost is, so we can actually follow, just to understand what is the cost of something like this.
So you're saying after it's approved, we'll track it for a few years, we can report back to you?
I think it would be nice to know, just to understand on a policy like this, which I really don't have a good grasp of how often it really will be used, because I think there is such a difference between having no policy that is paid and then going to a paid model that I think it would just be nice to know where that difference is.
Okay.
Councilmember Sperry?
Well, it's interesting because Councilmember Smith and I think we've been on the same journey a little bit here. So I actually, I think I've talked about it at the council, but many of you don't know that I actually am a grandma. And my youngest grandson was born 9 months ago, and he ended up with serious health issues. And so I saw firsthand what it was like for mom and dad to try to juggle work and just, maybe not as supportive of employers. One is self-employed and owns his own business, but the other, and it was just another stress. So I'm going to go with option number 2, and I just think it's important to support families, especially, in that very early stage with a young child.
And I would just comment that I sort of have mixed feelings about this, but maybe for different reasons than some of you. I hire a lot of people and fill positions, and when I have to fill 12 weeks of somebody's work, it's just plumb a lot of work to have somebody not on the job and yet having to hold that position. But I think it's the right thing to do. And honestly, like Councilman Herberg was saying, the amount of money is really insignificant for the benefit, I think, that we're giving. And it's okay with me if we're the first of the small cities to do it. So we can be trendsetters. We've done that in other areas. And I think this is, if it was millions, I might vote different. But, we're a small city with a small staff, and I think it's the right time and the right thing to do. And I also do vote for the Seattle. Keep it simple. Keep it equal to everybody. Just make it easy to apply. Anybody else have any comments?
So sounding like you would like us to move forward with this, and option 2 in particular. So what we'd like to do at an upcoming council meeting, probably in July, maybe June 26th, but probably July, is just have put a resolution on the agenda for you to approve, probably on consent since I have direction. I can add a clause in the policy that says that we'll report back to you annually for the first few years. Okay, we'll add that to the policy.
I think, may I?
Go ahead.
I think having some sense of the additional staff cost, if we are having to bring in other people, might be helpful. I don't know that it would change anything, but I think it would be important. That's what I was hearing. Was that not?
Okay, I thought we provided that. What are you looking for?
The actuals. So, in other words, after a year or so, we have.
Oh, in the reporting.
Yeah, that's what I was getting out of that. But some type of a report would be helpful.
Right. So once it's adopted, annually we'll report back and talk to you about the actual staff costs that have resulted from the policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I don't. The one thing I don't want you to do is feel like you have to spend 2 days of staff time figuring it out. I just want, during our budget discussion, is what I see as the most logical time. And if there's a more logical time, then let us know, or let me know. But this is one of those policies that it's so abstract, sort of, and I just would like to have a sense of what is the cost to a city our size on a policy like this. I just don't know.
It would be really easy to put that together.
Thank you.
And in honor of Councilmember Smith, let's not call it the Seattle policy. Let's just call it the best policy we could come up with. All right.
Okay.
I think we're done with, you could have direction on that one. And so moving to authorize the city manager to enter into assignment of the intellectual rights for cartoon character Hank Herron.
And so Sarah Bingham also has these next 2 items. And Sarah, do you want to take it away?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I, if I... Well, I can get started as we are pulling these images up. And so hopefully some of you are familiar with Hank Herron. He's done quite a few city communication pieces in different city projects. And so the city's senior civil engineer, Kent Vaughn, came up with this character. And he's been used for educational purposes, for construction signs, for city announcements, and is even on the cover of the city's budget. And Kent has been doing all of this cartoon work on his own time without any type of compensation, in addition to his full-time job. And because Hank is a growing character within the city feels like it is time to purchase the rights of Hank Herron from Kent, and also after that agreement would be made to pay Kent as an independent contractor for any additional cartoon work that he does.
I was actually thinking he's having so much fun, he should pay us to be able to do this, to provide an outlook for his artwork. That's not the proposal, huh?
No. And so we had some pictures for those of you who weren't familiar with Hank Herron, but we're having trouble bringing those up. So I can just review the main elements of the agreement that we've drafted, and that would be purchasing the rights. Oh, here we are. So for those of you who are familiar with Hank, we have quite a few. So educational things, educating children on keeping the rivers clean, and Target Zero, being safe, making people aware of different construction projects around the city, other public announcements, and then the cover of the budget. And so, going back to elements of the agreement, the city would purchase the rights of Hank Herron from Kent for $7,500, but allow Kent to continue using the Hank Herron character in his personal non-city related comic strips. Kent would also be given 25% of any future profits the city makes by selling Hank Herron merchandise. However, this would be quite unlikely, as the city does not seek to make a profit and generally sells items at cost value. And then after this agreement, the city would contract with Kent to do any independent cartoon work for the city outside of his regular job on his own time. Any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Sperry.
Well, my first one was, did you ever think you'd be writing a licensing agreement, or at least coming up with that as a report for a cartoon character?
No.
You probably get the most unique assignment in your program.
It's been great.
It'll be bragging rights when she goes back to school in the fall.
Maybe Ken will draw you something. So the second obvious question, though, is this acceptable to Kent? Obviously, you've worked that all out with him. Okay.
Yes, he's been a part of this and seen the different drafts.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember Danuski.
I think we're so fortunate to have somebody like Kent who was able to do this, and so for the amount of joy and smiles you get out of it, $7,500 seems like a drop in the bucket. And so it's very few times you get to read a council agenda and you start chuckling. But this was one of those times, and I loved it. So I'm absolutely for it.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yep, I'm totally for it. Kent's put a lot of time in, and just, all the requests that he's got, so he deserves this.
All right. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Let's go ahead. Clerk, take the vote.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sperry?
Yes.
Councilmember Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. 5 votes for. All right, moving to staff report, utility box art. Again, Sarah Bingham, our star of the night.
You're almost done with me. Okay, and so utility boxes throughout the city are obviously essential to infrastructure, and yet the actual boxes are quite unattractive. And we're looking into turning several of them into pieces of public art where we'd put images on them. And when Peter Kageyama came to Kenmore, one of the things he taught was that when citizens can connect emotionally with their city, they become more invested in all aspects of improving the community. And we feel that this would be a small and simple way to allow members of the community to connect emotionally with something that they would usually just ignore in the past. And many cities throughout this region and the country have successful art programs on utility boxes. And if you see, these are two that were done in Glendale, California. And Glendale's program, they've actually painted over 80 utility boxes. And there's also a lot more in this region as well, in Shoreline and Olympia and different places. And in Glendale, artists paint directly onto boxes, but other cities have figured out that they can print images or photos or paintings on vinyl wraps and put them around the box, as you can see in this one in Vancouver, Canada. And that allows for a lot of different mediums to be used and also doesn't compromise the box by having paint seep into cracks and keyholes and things like that. And so from our contact with WashDOT, he recommended that we look in towards the vinyl wraps. And many of the utility boxes in Kenmore are owned by WashDOT or Puget Sound Energy, and neither organization has given permission to decorate their boxes, but we've been in communication with both, and both seem fairly open to potentially doing some type of pilot program in the future. And so the plan is to start with city-owned utility boxes with the traffic signals that the city owns and the accompanying utility boxes, and hopefully as we see those done successfully, that Puget Sound Energy and WashDOT might be more open to those in the future. And so our current plan is to first decorate this utility box right on the edge of Rhododendron Park, which is right on the corner of Juanita Drive and 170th Street. And our plan is to use a photograph taken actually at the park of rhododendrons and wrap it around the box. And so instead of just being this metal box, it actually is complementary to its surroundings and fits in with its surroundings. So often public art is a statement of where it's located. And those that picture would actually have been taken from the park. And then our
The photographer that we used is Larry Gorland, who's a Kenmore resident. So he's fairly well known here in the community for his photography.
And then we are also working with Kent Vaughn for a Hank Herron cartoon image that would cover this utility box that's right in front of City Hall. So similar to that. And when thinking about the costs of this, the cost would be associated with needing to pay the artists for their images. Paying for public art is important in getting the quality and respecting artists for what they do. But since we're using the vinyl wraps, it doesn't need to be as much because they get to keep their original piece of art. So other cities who have done similar programs have given artists around $500 to $1,000 for their work. And then the other additional costs would come from printing the vinyl wrap and installing that. And for the Rhododendron Park utility box, we're waiting to hear back from multiple sign companies. And based on the estimates we've received so far, that should be around $800 for that. So we are hopefully going to be moving forward with these first two that are owned by the city fairly soon. So if you have any questions.
Councilmember Herberg?
I love this. I saw one of these a couple years back, either in Kirkland or Bellevue. I don't remember exactly. Maybe Redmond. I don't remember exactly where I was. And I made a note of it, and I probably sent an email at some weird hour to Rob about it. I don't know.
So that's where the idea came from.
Or maybe Chris. I don't know. But it was one of those things where I was like, this is great. We need to look into this. But this was a couple years ago, and I'd forgotten about it. And this is one of those things where as you're going through the city, your subconscious sees these things and recognizes them as ugly. But consciously, you just kind of block them out. They're just noise. And doing something to make them attractive, I think, is a great thing. I mean, one that really sticks out for me is the one that's probably controlled by WashDOT, just down the sidewalk here. It is probably 6 feet wide and 6 feet tall. It is awful. And I would love to, I'd love for us to work with WashDOT on a way to address these things, because they're just kind of, they're so ubiquitous within our environment that we're kind of used to them. But we shouldn't be used to ugly things in our environment if we don't have to. And these are things that are easily unuglified, especially with the new wrap technology that is kind of blowing up right now. The options are limitless, and there's no reason why we can't make these lemons into lemonade. So thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Danuski?
Okay, new word of the day, unuglified. Right.
I know, I think of the same thing.
That's a 9:45 p.m.
It's
word.
almost 10 o'clock.
I love it. I'm totally supportive. This will make you smile.
Councilmember Sperry?
So, yes, of course, absolutely. Right now, it seems like the plain boxes, I was almost going to call them graffiti boxes, because they do seem to be target. And I have been seeing more of that kind of stuff. And so one of my comments would be, can we make sure that these wraps have whatever it takes to anti-graffiti coating, whatever it is, just so that if somebody does decide to spray paint it, which I hope they won't, and we respect because it has been unuglified, as we've just learned here. But if there is something like that, that would make it easier. It sounds like there is.
Yes, and so first off, having something on there deters people because
Sure.
they usually want a blank space.
Right.
And so just having that, and then there's also these different coats and sealants that other cities have used that help deter and make it harder.
So then you can get it off easy if somebody does go a little nuts. Okay.
So I guess my question was, do we need any guidelines? And as an art-challenged person, I could imagine several guidelines. One is they'll all have a similar look and feel. One, it would be that they'll all be different. One is that we could have an art committee think about it. One is that we could make each one unique to each location. So there's all kinds of guidelines you could set up, and somebody artistic should probably be more involved than me. So any thoughts on guidelines?
Yes, so we have met with a representative from the Arts of Kenmore, and if we expanded this to try to get local artists to contribute and submit designs, there's all different types of program things that we could put into place if we wanted to do that. And so those are still the early stages, but that's definitely something that we'd want in insight from the Arts of Kenmore. So I totally agree.
So far, looking at the two examples, I would say we're going to the unique to each area. That's our guiding principle so far.
You know me, I like to get things up quickly and just get an example up and then proceed from there.
I like guiding principles. So we can do both. All right,
Yeah.
any other comments on this one? Do you need specific direction, or we'll go for these two?
No, yeah, I think we're going to proceed unless there's any objections. And we'll work with the Arts of Kenmore on doing more.
All right. Any other staff report?
Yeah. So as you know, Janet Quinn has been talking to you about the integrated aquatic vegetation management plan, and getting public comment on that. And one of the things that plan calls for is for us to coordinate with our upstream neighbors.
Thank you, by the way, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And so we've not only been reaching out to our upstream neighbors on managing aquatic weeds and noxious weeds, but we've also been talking to other agencies. And in particular, actually, for the last couple of years, we've been in sporadic talks with Forterra. And Forterra, one of the things they're known for is their great work on habitat restoration on river corridors. And in my mind, the best example of what Forterra has taken the lead on is the Cedar River restoration. They eradicated 90% of the knotweed on many miles of the Cedar River. They're also working on Bear Creek and the Duwamish and a couple other rivers. And they've figured out a way for a nonprofit group to come and take the lead, find the resources, the grants, and the volunteers to do these amazing restoration projects. A couple of years ago, we said, you've done such a great job on the Cedar. Looks like that's getting more and more under control. What about turning your attention to the Sammamish River? And they thought that was interesting, and then they helped with the acquisition of the Wayne Golf Course purchase in Bothell, which I think got their attention and resources turned to the Sammamish River even more. And we just had a meeting with them a few days ago where they told us, yes, we are interested in heading up a Sammamish River habitat restoration project where we would work to remove invasive weeds and replace them with native habitat plants along the corridor from Lake Sammamish to Lake Washington. And so the next step is for Forterra to facilitate a meeting with the mayors and the city managers from the cities, so Redmond, Woodinville, Bothell, Kenmore, and also King County, and gauge their interests. So far I've reached out to my counterparts and they seem interested. The mayor mentioned it at a North End mayor's meeting the other day, and there was definite interest. So I think we're fortunate that Forterra is interested in heading this up. Would it cost us money? Hopefully not too much. There may come a point perhaps where the cities and the county may need to chip in on a grant match or something. But other than that, Forterra is really wanting to take the lead on it and staff it and just get support from the cities. So the other point to make is this is not an overnight project. It's probably like a 10-year endeavor, and as it was on the Cedar River. So it's not something that's going to happen quickly, but if we're patient and we persevere, it can definitely happen over time. And of course, we'll include agencies like the Snow King Watershed Council. I've already mentioned it to Eric Admin, and the tribes and others who have definitely already shown an interest in this. So I think that's all I have for staff report.
All right. I'm going to manage the council member reports differently. The assumption is, given the hour, that nobody has anything to say unless you speak up now. All right. The meeting is adjourned.